enjambment is the poetic device that is used in the first 3 lines of this particular stanza. Now, what does it do here? When you talk to someone, you want them to understand you. You want to be understood and you also want to understand them. That's when the communication grows and glows. The son is growing, the son is having his own world, but the father is not really able to digest it. A very warm welcome to all of you to your prep school English classes. I am your English teacher, Kshama. Today we are setting forth on learning our 5th poem from your textbook Hornbill, which is named as Father to Son. It's more of a word from a father to son. By who? What is happening? What is the word about? Let's discuss. Okay? Now in this session, we are going to talk about the poet. We are going to analyze the entire poem line by line, understand what each word means, what does it represent, okay? And then talk about the poetic devices, as I've told you in the last classes, what these poetic devices do, why are they used, okay? Let's find out what are the poetic devices used in this particular poem and what effect are they causing on us, okay? Now, before we start, I have a couple of questions for you. These are questions you might or might not have heard before. First one, do you frequently feel that your parents or your elders, be it your siblings as well, they don't get you, they don't understand you? Or have you at least seen them, sensed that they are trying? Do you on your part feel that I don't understand my elders or my parents or my sibling? What are they talking? What are they feeling? Why do I not understand them? Have you tried reaching out to them and communicate the same to them? Do you think there builds a void or a gap between you and your elders or the younger generation and the older generation? Now, what could be done to bridge the gap, to build the gap? What are the tactics, some of the tactics that you have tried, or things that might be successful, some might not be? But have you tried bridging the gap at least? What is all this question about? Let's figure out. Now, the poet who has written this beautiful poem for us, Father to Son, you were wondering it might have been written by a father, but it is written by a woman named Elizabeth Jennings. Now, Elizabeth Jennings is an English poet. What is the beautiful thing about her is that whatever she wrote on point. Although things that she wrote had a lot of emotional sensitivity to it, she wrote on point, like objectively, without any vague descriptions or, a lot of decorations and hidden meanings. She wrote it on point. And she had a long, strong logic, emotional sensitivity, avoided decoration and a lot of vagueness. Her verse, her poetry reflected her love for Italy and Roman Catholicism. Most of them spoke about these two topics. And most importantly, Somerset Maugham Award, the work that got her the Somerset Maugham Award, is The Way of Looking in 1955. This got her the particular award. And the work that talks about the nervous breakdown and its aftermath are The Recoveries, which is written in 1964, and The Mind Has Mountains, which is written in 1966. It talks about the nervous breakdown and its aftermath. She also published poetry for children. And in 1992, an exceptional thing about her is that she was the commander of the British Empire. Okay, this is what we know about our poet Elizabeth Jennings. She is an English poet who wrote on point with strong logic but emotional sensitivity without avoiding all the vagueness and a lot of decoration in her verse. Two things that are very much found are Roman Catholicism and her love for Italy. There is A Way of Looking, which got her the Somerset Maugham Award, and the works that talk about the nervous breakdown and its aftermath is the first one, Recoveries, and The Mind Has Mountains. She also published poems for children. And the finest thing about her is that she was the commander of the British Empire in the year 1992. Okay, these are the things that we know about Elizabeth Jennings. Let's see what she writes, and how she appeals us as the readers. Let's enjoy. First one. This poem particularly has 4 stanzas, and the first stanza goes like this. I do not understand this child. I do not understand this child. Though we have lived together now in the same house for years, we have lived in the same house for years. I know nothing of him. So try to build up a relationship from how? From how what? From how he was when small. Yet, have I killed? I do not understand this child. It starts on such negating something negative note, right? I do not understand this child. Here we know that the father is speaking, written by Elizabeth Jennings. The father is saying, I do not understand this child. This child, he's talking about his son. Note that he's not saying, I'm not understanding my son. He says, this child, I don't understand this child. You see there is a little frustration that he is not being able to understand him. The communication gap between the father and the son is bothering him. Though we have lived together now in the same house for years. So do you also think, or do you agree, or do you disagree on the fact that living together with the same person for a long period of time helps you to understand them or will not help you to understand them? Do you not have to make efforts to reach out to the person and try to understand them? But our father over here, he says, I do not understand this child, although we have lived in the same house, though we have lived together in the same house for years now. Same house for years now. I know nothing of him. I do not know anything of him. This communication gap, the inability to understand his own son is a little frustrated. The frustration has started to build up in the father. Okay, how do you get to know that? There's a beautiful poetic device, wonderful poetic device used over here, and it is called as enjambment. I'm not sure if you're hearing it for the first time, but if you are, let me introduce it to you. Enjambment is the poetic device that is used in the first 3 lines of this particular stanza. Now, what does it do here? You see that the line starts from here, I do not understand, and ends over here without the usage of any punctuation marks in between. There's no comma, there's no semicolon used over here. His entire, the rush of expressing his frustration, it has come down in one whole line. The 3 lines are actually one whole line. The saying of the whole thing in the long line without the usage of any punctuation marks in between is called as enjambment. This poetic device that have been introduced to you here is called as enjambment. Look at the rush it creates. Look at the wanting to express the whole thing once and for all. That effect it creates, the poetic device. Okay, I know nothing of him. Why do I not know anything about him? So try to build up a relationship. Now there is a mix of regret of not being able to understand his own son, but a hope that let me try to build up a relationship with him at least. But on what grounds? You tell me if it is right or wrong. He wants to build up a relationship with the son based on how he was when he was small. Now, can you go back to the son when he was 5-year-old and talk to him as you would when he used to be small? Can you say, do you want chocolate? Do you want something to play with? When he has grown up, can you talk to him like that? Or what are you trying to do? It is true that for a father or for any parent, the child is always a child, no matter how grown up he is, no matter he is the CEO of some company or, she's a pilot. It doesn't matter. You will always be the child of your parent. For them, you're always a little baby. Now, that's how the father is trying to approach this situation over here, this situation of misunderstanding or the communication gap between the father and the son. His approach towards is that let's try to build it up. How he was when it was small. But yet have I killed. What have you killed? What is happening? Let's see. A recap of this stanza would be, he's trying to emphasize on his trials, the way he's trying hard to build the gap between the father and son relationship, the void that has been created. He's emphasizing on that. I'm not being able to understand. I know nothing of him. I want to know. So I'll try to build up a relationship. He attempts to analyze the causes. What could be the reason? We have lived in the same house for so many years. He tries to make it up. Let's try talking to him or approaching him how he was when he was before. Let's start from the scratch. So we also talked about the enjambment. But is it okay if for the parents to approach the child thinking that they'll be the same as they were before? Or should you expect some change? Or should you not expect anything at all? You tell me. That's a whole lot of complex process, but you tell me, okay? These are the things that I tell you. You have to answer back whatever the answers that you have with yourself. Now, the seed that I spent or sown it where the land is his and none of mine. We speak like strangers. There's no sign of understanding in the air. This child is built to my design. This child is built to my design. Yet, what he loves, I cannot share. The seed I spent or sown. What is the seed that he's talking about here? Seed I spent, sown. He's talking about his efforts, the efforts that he has put in bringing this child up, in conditioning this child, putting a lot of values into him. The seed, the sowing process, everything that he's saying is the efforts that he has put in bringing up, in raising this child. He has put in a lot of efforts, okay? The land is his and none of mine. Although I have put up a lot of efforts in bringing him up, although he's built to my design, he is built with my ideologies, with my ideas, but as he grew up, he has his own ideas, he has his own thoughts, he has his own world. It is his. The land is his. The thought, the ideas. How come although I raised him with my own ideas, he has his own ideas which are very different from mine? How is it possible? And none of mine. I don't recognize this child. Is he really my son? How come he doesn't, talk like me, has my ideas or thoughts or expressions? How is it that it is possible? We speak like strangers, There is simile over here, whatever that is compared with the help of like and as in between. We speak. How do we speak? We speak like friends? No. We speak like strangers. People who don't know at all, don't know each other at all. People who have met each other for the very first time. We speak like strangers. Is that how a father and son are supposed to speak to each other? Not just like strangers. Strangers who have no sign. There is no sign of understanding. When you talk to someone, you want them to understand you. You want to be understood and you also want to understand them. That's when the communication grows and glows. But over here, the father and son, they speak like strangers. And even when they speak, there is no understanding. He's saying something, I am saying something. And he's understanding something, I am understanding something else. Very bothersome, isn't it? In the air, the child is built to my design. My design. Yet what he loves, I cannot share. Now, father has, shared his cricket bat with him, shown him the area where he used to play, everything. But it is not mandatory that the son should also like it. The son might like another playground. He might want to play hockey instead and not cricket. He says, he is built to my design. He is my son. He should be like me, is it not? But he likes something else. And I don't think I can understand it and I can share it. Or although he's built to my design, I have sown, I have put efforts. So is it that the father is wanting that since I have put efforts, he should be like me, or he should be like me, or act like me? What does the father want? Now, recapping this whole stanza over here, we understand that there is a dilemma of detachment that is going. The son is growing, the son is having his own world, but the father is not really able to digest it. He has a dilemma going on within himself. He doesn't know what exactly he wants. He knows that the son is growing, which is inevitable, but he also wants him to be like him, which is strange, is it not? So there's dilemma of detachment that we have to talk about, the generational gap between the father and the son in their ideas, in their choices. Whatever the son is wearing, all the cool printed t-shirts, father doesn't like it. He says, whatever he likes, I don't think I can also put it on. But you want your son to put on whatever you are putting on. Okay, if you also like a formal shirt, you actually are wishing the son to also put on the formal shirt. So is it okay on the father's side to have expectations? Let's see. There is also communication issues. Although they are talking, they are not able to understand each other. There is no sign of understanding at all. They are talking like strangers. The kid has grown up according to the ideologies of the father, but he has his own world of thoughts that he appreciates. He has his own world going on. So the father feels outcasted he feels secluded out of the son's, his own son's circle, and that is what is bothering him, making him feel terrible. So there is simile, we speak like strangers, comparison of how they are speaking like strangers. There is also alliteration. Alliteration, if we go back, we see that the consonant sound, as I had introduced you in the last poem, consonant sound S has been repeated over here. We speak like strangers. The consonant sound S is repeated. That is an example of alliteration. Then metaphor. What is a metaphor? Metaphor is a comparison. Here, two images have been compared. The seed I spent or sown it. Now here, the seed that he is sowing or he is spending in the land also, it is not literally that he is going somewhere and putting the seeds somewhere and wanting the plant to grow in the land. He is comparing that imagery of putting the seed and the seed growing into him bringing up his own son. He is sowing his efforts. Now that imagery is the representation of, is compared to his efforts, okay? The efforts that he has put in bringing up his son. Now that is a metaphor, okay? Next up. Now will both the parties sharing and accepting everything, will that help? Now in every stages we have questions. Now father expecting the son to be the same. Let me just go back to him and approach him as to how he was when he was young. Will that help? We don't know. Now will both the parties sitting, like the father and son sitting, sharing everything, accepting the generational gaps, their choices, will that help? Let's see. There are a lot of questions, is it not? Now, to the third stanza. Silence surrounds us. I would have him prodigal, returning to his father's house, the home he knew. Rather than see him make and move his world, I would forgive him too, shaping from sorrow a new love. Now, where have we reached in the third stanza? Silence surrounds us. Why does silence surround us? Here also in the first line, evidently, as you're watching the video, without me explaining, you know what this is. Do you not? It's alliteration, of course. Look at the effect it is causing on us. Silence surrounds us. The consonant sound S has been repeated twice over here. Why is there silence? Because they are speaking like strangers, no air of understanding, which means no communication at all. From disturbed communication, we have come down to no communication at all between the father and son. I would have him prodigal. Now, if you have heard the story of prodigal son from the Bible, the story goes something like this. There was once a father and his younger son demands one day to have his share of property, and he leaves this father and goes away. After a while, when he loses everything, he spends everything, he actually returns to his father and seeks to be, taken back. And the father agrees, he takes him back. Although the older son is not really happy about it, he says he has experienced the fair share of bitterness of the world and he has come back home. He has come back to his father. I will have him. That's what the story is about, the prodigal. Now here he is referring, Elizabeth Jennings is referring to the prodigal son's story. The father is talking, of course. Father says, it is okay if he leaves me, but I would want him to come back to me, actually. I mean, here I feel a little pity and sad about how the father is feeling. I know he has the dilemma of detachment and everything, but he is also experiencing everything for the first time, right? He doesn't know how to deal with it, but he's at least trying. And that's what matters. Returning to his father's house. It's okay if he goes, but he has to return to his father's house. Also, it is father's house, but his father's house, is it not? His father's house, the home he knew. If to put it in a nutshell, he wants this bird, his son, to fly away. It's okay, you fly away, but come back to your nest. Have a sense of belongingness to your house, to your people, to your father, is what he feels. Okay? Home he knew. Rather than see him make his world and just move away. Here, with his world, he means his future. Okay? He's talking about his future. I know he has to build his future, but just don't go away. Don't make your world and just move away from me. Come back. Have a sense of attachment and belongingness with your father. I would forgive him too. Now, this is a little condescending, but the word too takes away the sense of condescending over here. I would forgive him too. Too meaning what? You also want to be forgiven. If you would have just said, I would forgive him, that would have been condescending. That would have been like commanding. But he says, I would forgive him too, which means I also want forgiveness. I would want him to forgive me as well for the lack of communication, inability to understand, generational gap, whatever that is there between us. Let's forgive each other and have a fresh start. How? Shaping from sorrow a new love. Let's give birth to something positive out of all the negatives we have been through. Let's shape a beautiful love, a beautiful relationship out of all the pain and out of all the sorrow. Okay, how beautiful appeal is that. So going through this stanza all over again, there is emptiness, silence surrounds us, lack of communication. Okay, it is okay if he is prodigal, if he is wasteful, he just is not able to do anything, goes out of the house. The father wants him to return back home, return home. Okay, and then the reference of the prodigal son story, of course. Then have a sense of belongingness, come back to the father's house that he knew. Okay, the kid is developing autonomy over his world. He's making his world, he's moving in his world. But it is very difficult for the father to accept and digest. The one that was holding your tiny little finger the other day is just making his own world, making his mark in the world today. Okay, that is the contrasting, drastic difference the father is a little unable to digest. So he is quite condescending when he says, I would forgive him, but he says, I would forgive him too, which means you also have to forgive me. Then there is alliteration, of course. Alliteration in the home he knew here. H sound has been repeated. Home he knew. Okay. Then antithesis. What is antithesis? Now here in this line, we see that sorrow, out of this sorrow, we see love being born. These are two opposite things, is it not? Love out of sorrow is an opposite idea. That opposite idea is called as antithesis. Both of these put together, not just put together just like that, but one being born out of the other, which sounds quite impossible, is it not? For example, if I say love being born out of hate, hatred is such a contrasting emotion while compared to love. So these two put together, or these two, put in a relationship with each other, somehow connected, that is called as antithesis. Shaping from sorrow, a love. From this opposite idea to this opposite idea, it is an antithesis, a poetic device named antithesis. Then there is synecdoche. What is a synecdoche? Here, we see that make him move his world. Now, with the sun's world, we mean his future. When something is used, for example, here, the word world. When world is used to symbolize his entire future. When one word is used to symbolize a whole of something, okay? When I say hired hands, now this expression hired hands means that hands are who? I am talking about all the workers that I have hired, okay? It is a part that symbolizes the whole. Now here, world symbolizes his entire future, and vice versa. If we were saying future, we were talking about future, then his future, right? This world, the word world over here symbolizes his entire future, making and moving his world, his future. Here, this small part is talking about an entire thing, right? That expression, that is called as synecdoche. Something that represents a part of something or vice versa is called as synecdoche. We see that there is alliteration used over here, antithesis and synecdoche. Okay. Next up, next stanza. Father and son, we both must live on the same globe and on the same land. He speaks. I cannot understand myself why anger grows from grief. We each put out an empty hand, longing for something to forgive. Father and son, both of them, okay, they have to live on the same globe, on the same land, meaning they have to reach a ground of common understanding, common grounds of understanding. They have to understand each other. They have to face each other, live each other. There is a relationship, there's a bond between them, right? So there should be something that would stitch the gap, that stitches and repairs every little damage that has happened between them. Okay? He speaks. Who speaks? The son speaks finally. It was monologue from the father, the whole, father speaking all throughout. But now the son finally speaks and says, I cannot understand myself. He is probably in an adolescent stage, or probably he is also growing. He's trying to understand the world. He's not all grown up like his father, is he? He's trying to understand himself and the world around him and how to live. In that case, when he's so much struggling to understand himself, okay, there is anger, they're growing out of grief, okay, there's so much pain, so much frustration, not being able to understand oneself. What do I do with my life? Where do I go? Which profession suits me? Who are my friends? Who are not? There's so much that he is also dealing with. In that grief, in that frustration, anger, he is trying to take air of comprehension, trying to understand everything, right? There, we each put out an empty hand, but both of them are trying. I mean, in this entire poem, this thought is much, much important. It is very important for you all to note over here. Although there are problems, although there are differences, both father and son want to try, want to give it a try, give it a thought to repair it. They both lend a hand. They both put out an empty hand. They don't know what to offer or to take. But they say, longing for something to forgive. They want forgiveness, but don't know how to ask. All they know is, we do want to be forgiven. I mean, we don't know how to ask or what to be done about it, but let's try. Okay, that's what this stanza offers over here. Father and son, they must come to some common grounds of understanding, but then the son also comes out of his cocoon and speaks. He says, sometimes I cannot understand myself. I'm sorry about it, okay? It is how it is. I also have my grief and anger and inability to understand this world, myself and you. But let's both give a hand and try Let's just give it a try. Let's just attempt to repair everything. So common grounds of understanding. Miscommunication leads to pain and a lot of anger. The kid is trying to understand himself and is also struggling. Both of them want to be forgiven and to forgive. They don't know how to ask. That is also there. But so they just wait for it to happen organically. Let's just wait and see if that happens organically. Let's just try. But have a hope. Although there are so many things going on, let's just hope that everything gets repaired. And there is also alliteration, grows from grief. The consonant G has been repeated twice. That is the alliteration. If you were searching, where is the alliteration? I have not put it there. It is here. Grows from grief. I completely get blown away by the effect alliteration creates, okay? There is one in William Shakespeare's work where he says, 5 fathom, something like that. It is very beautiful, the effect what alliteration creates, okay? Next up, we talked about alliteration. Then, what is the theme of this poem? The theme is generational gap between the father and son. It is very clear. That is what the father is speaking about, expressing how he is feeling about the generational gap. The poem has 4 stanzas, which is written in the free verse. Although there were words that at the end that rhymed with each other, there's no particular rhyme scheme. Okay. Still a child to his father, he's addressing the child as, I am not able to understand this child. I know nothing of him. He's still a child to his father. And it's still a question. Does it help you to understand a person when you just live with them under the same roof for many years? It's still a question mark. And in the poem, he nowhere addresses him as my son, only except when he says, return back to his father's house. So there is a blurred line between a loving father and an autocrat. Like, he is also confused within himself. Does he want too much of, trying to show your love on your child? Also becomes like you're too much controlling the child. You're saying he is becoming his own. He is making his world moving. But when you want him to come back, are you controlling him? Are you controlling him? Or are you showing his love? There's a blurred line between being a father and an autocrat, which he is also trying to deal with. But what we would talk about here is that when you say prodigal son, you can actually let him go. Let the child go. It is said that whoever you love the most, whoever you feel a lot of affection towards, letting them go is the best form of love you can show towards them. Now, the choice that the father has over here is, if your child wants to go out there and make it big in the world, he or she will always remain as your child. Okay, I know it sounds more like a poem to your parents, but you can go and explain it to them, no worries. Okay, so let them go have a life of their own. Let them make a story of their own. Although they make a story of their own, their root story will always be yours. They will always shoot up from you. It is you who is the source, who is the root. And if suffering or achievement, everything is personal. Let them suffer, let them learn the bitterness of the world, let them come back home. Let them have life in their own ways possible. Let them have life in their own ways possible. In their story, you will always be there. I hope you as kids will be able to make your parents understand this. And you can also make your parents read On Children, a beautiful poem by Khalil Gibran, who talks about how your children are definitely your children, but then they have a life of their own. It's such a beautiful poem. You must read it and also make your parents read. So on that note, we had such a simple looking yet so complex, so intricate poem filled with emotions today. I had a great time talking about the poem with you. I'm sure you also have a great time reading the poem, reciting it to your parents. Talk about the poem with your parents, with your elders. See to what they feel about it, how much you contradict or agree with them, come up with some new ideas as to how you might just write a poem of your own, right? Something like son to father, or daughter to father, daughter to mother, son to mother, anything. This just gave rise to a lot of ideas, I believe, within yourself. On that note, I'll see you all in the next class. Come up with a lot of ideas, come up with a lot of appreciation, understanding. That is what I'd be hoping to looking forward. Have a great time. I'll see you all. Thank you.